The Phantom Toll Booth, your gateway to music and more from a Christian perspective, presents press conferences from the only Christian music festival that really matters, the Cornerstone Festival 2012. Sit back, relax, and you will hear from some of the most fascinating, intriguing, and sometimes controversial musicians, authors, and organizations around. Tollbooth.org. Slow down and have your change ready.
Thanks once again for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, at the Phantom Toll Booth, Cornerstone 2012 press tent. Joining us this afternoon is the man who is all things metal, Mr. HM, Doug Van Pelt, with your moderator, Linda LaFianza. Thanks for joining us, Doug.
Thank you, Dan.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back.
Thanks for coming.
And yeah, we're back with that world-famous publisher, author, musician, Texan, Doug Van Pelt.
Can we move Texan up on the list? No, I'm just kidding.
Everything's got a big D on it, a big star on it.
Yeah.
So, Doug, when we last interviewed you, we did a pretty good recap of your history. We've got that on the record of how you started your magazine and saw it through so many genres, through so many eras, and eras certainly are short, aren't they, in this whole thing?
Yeah.
Now let's take us from that point forward. You only were able to put out a couple more issues after we spoke, and then so could you tell us how that all worked out and it's the current form, and then actually it kind of goes full circle because you're in print again as a magazine, as HM Magazine, the item you're most known for.
Like maybe it was the interview last year that did me in. You know, just only 2 issues after the interview, you're done. The interview was 2 years ago?
2 years.
Okay, well, pardon me. As Larry Norman would say.
No, that's me. Last year didn't happen.
Last year didn't happen. Well, anyway, last year, 2011, HM Magazine had been through a Save HM Magazine campaign where I was trying to keep the magazine in print because everything print was going downhill. The music industry was just freaking out because sales were just like dropping, probably like dropping exponentially every year, every quarter. And that made our job harder as, you know, selling advertising, which is really what pays the print bill. And so 2011, at the top of the year, I don't know how to describe this without getting into numbers. I know numbers bore people, and you know it's businessy type information. But for years and years and years, I will share with you, we sold $30,000 in ads every issue, and that paid our bills. That paid the print bills, which were in the neighborhood of $10,000, and it paid for office space and employees and insurance and all that stuff. And a couple years prior, 2007, 2008. Those numbers started to dip into the 20s on ad sales. And we had an ad sales team in Tennessee that was selling ads for us and doing a good job. But because of the changing economy, I had to actually let my ad sales team go. And I took that hat and started wearing the ad sales hat. And advertising sales kept going lower and lower. And I was down to, like, the last year, it was down to about 15, which was half of what we needed to make. Because that 30,000 in ads every issue wasn't making us rich. It was just kind of keeping us in the game. And the January-February issue of 2011, we had the Chariot on the cover. The ad sales were like 7.5, 7.8, so it was like ridiculously low. It's like I don't even know if I can go to press with this issue, much less ever carry on again. And so what I decided to do is I kept the deadline open, tried to sell more ads, and you know that was kind of a futile effort. And so I decided to just cut my losses, print that January issue, and declare myself quarterly from now on. For 26 years, we've been a bi-monthly magazine, and bi-monthly does not mean 2 times a month, it means every other month. It's kind of confusing because biannually is every 2 years, and semi-annually is every 6 months. But anyway, so we went quarterly, and so the next issue was issue 148 with Haste the Day on the cover, and we kind of said goodbye to Haste the Day and did a really cool 7 or 8 or 9 page retrospective goodbye to Haste the Day. And the next issue was our Cornerstone issue, which was, I guess, the July, August, September issue, since we were quarterly, and it was one of those double covers. And that did a little bit better because the summer issues are always easier to sell because a lot of record companies come out with albums at that time and they want to advertise. And then the next issue was issue 150, which would be our October, November, December issue. And I kind of did some math work on paper. I figured out what I need to sell in ads. And again, it's boring to throw numbers out there, but my fleece before the Lord was $21,000 in ad sales. So I figured out by cutting corners, by lowering everything and cutting our overhead as much as possible, 21,000 was the magic number, and I was going to continue in print if I got there. And as I got closer to the deadline, I was up to 18,000 in sales. And I thought, okay, I can do this because The Devil Wears Prada was on the cover, an Equal Vision band, and there's like 3 or 4 or 5 labels that were like no-brainers. We're doing big features on their bands. They're going to say yes. They all said no. So I was like, $3,000 away from my fleece. So I was like, okay, Lord, this is your problem. I've got my answer here. It's as plain as day. I did not make 21, and I was committed. If I was at $29.99, I was going to stay out. I was going to go out of print because 21 was the number. I probably would have called a friend of mine and said, please buy an ad for 1 penny. But anyway, so I decided to go out of print at that time and just be digital only. I'd been doing digital editions since 2007, so I kind of had been doing that, and some of the people who like to read magazines on their tablet or their notebook were able to do that for years and years. And so I made the transition to go digital only, and in between October and December, I had the crazy idea of not just going digitally and not just going back to bi-monthly, but going monthly. And I decided to rush an issue out in December. So I put out a December issue, and I was going to give it away. And I'll probably do that every year. Like the December issue will be a free issue. So people that are curious and don't want to fork out, the $6 at the time for a 1-year subscription, could try it out for nothing. And so I went monthly at that time, and I've got like 7 issues under my belt in the digital world. And I've kind of streamlined things a bit. I kind of know what I'm doing, and I've kind of done it so often that it's somewhat easy, but it's still kind of a struggle with advertising sales at the present day. But does that answer your question? Does that bring us up to date on that?
Well, almost, but it can now be purchased on paper again, correct?
That is true. I'll talk a little bit about my book publishing just to give you background on this, but I've been doing some self-publishing. I started an imprint of HM Magazine called HM Press, where I can release books. And the company I use is called lulu.com, Lulu.com. And you can go there and you can search HM Magazine, and you can find all the issues that are available to buy. They've been doing some books for me, and they print 1 copy at a time. So somehow they store things digitally, and they print 1 copy at a time. So I upload my PDF files, the same files that I would send to the printer. And so they have available a book. Now, it's not something that we service or we send to people, but we make it available. So I send this printer the files and make it available. So if you search out HM Magazine at lulu.com, you'll see all of our issues. It's about $5.99 plus postage for an all black and white version. And the black and white versions, I have to use a certain kind of paper, and I have to do a perfect binding, which means it has a spine on it, which means it has to be a minimum of 84 pages. And my magazine is 60 pages, so I've been adding content. Not many people know this, but I've been going back to the archives, and I've been taking issues of Heaven's Metal Fanzine, and I've taken like the top 100 Christian rock albums of all time list, and multiple photos. I've done like a 20-page photo spread on one issue just to get to 84 pages. So the black and white version is about $5.99. It's perfect balance, 84 pages. The color version looks beautiful because I've always been half color, half black and white to save money. And this is all color, and it looks beautiful. And those are about $17 plus postage. But I've been getting a copy of every issue, and it's great to hold it in my hand again.
Well, sure, and I think a magazine like HM, which is sort of the magazine of record for Christian metal, Christian hard stuff. All right, maybe I'm a little old school, but I'm with you. You can't. What are you going to do when you lose your tablet or the OS is out of date? You lose all that. So that's kind of an exciting development to have it back in print. All right, well, yeah, let's talk about these books that you put out. You've been pretty prolific lately, right?
Yeah, it's been a busy year. I've been working on a novel for 5 years, and I'll try to give you the 30-second version of what the novel's about. My dad was an Air Force career test pilot, fighter pilot, and when he was stationed at Edwards Air Force Base, which is the mecca for test flight, where the movie The Right Stuff was kind of based upon breaking the sonic barrier for the first time there. The space shuttle lands there when it can't land in Florida. I went to high school there. It was called Desert High School. We were the Desert Scorpions. And I played football my sophomore, junior, and senior year. Loved it, had a lot of fun. And we went to the playoffs the last couple years I played. And the first round of the playoffs, we were playing the Mammoth Huskies. And I hate the Mammoth Huskies. My password on my computer to open up my Windows is Mammoth Sucks. So I'm 49 years old now, and I still when I see the word Mammoth, and I got goosebumps on my hand right now, you can see. We were in the first round of the playoffs. We were playing the Mammoth Huskies on Bishop Mountain, which is where Jill Claymont, the famous skier, got paralyzed. We were playing there because Mammoth didn't have stadium lights. And this is going to be not the 30-second version. This will be the 3-minute version.
We have the time.
Okay, good.
Do go on.
So anyway, in the fourth quarter, the Desert Scorpions were ahead. We were beating the Mammoth Huskies. They threw a desperation long pass with under 2 minutes to go, and they were down inside the 10-yard line. And we were holding them to a goal line stand. And if you know football, they kept running at us, and we were stuffing them at the line. And this is where things went terribly wrong. The last 2 plays they played were running plays, but there was only 6 seconds on the clock. And if you know anything about the rules in football, you can't do a 1 running play in 6 seconds, much less 2, but they pulled off 2. There was no timeouts, no injuries, no out-of-bounds play, no incomplete passes, no penalties. Those are all the reasons to stop a clock at the end of a game, and none of those occurred, but yet they were able to run 2 running plays. And on the very last play, the quarterback, Marty Zwartz, he was tackled at the line, and he took the ball like a basketball, and he threw it forward into the end zone with both hands. My best friend, Pat Zhang, saw the ball coming towards him. He's thinking incomplete pass. He bats it down, game over. Their offensive tackle jumps on the ball in the end zone. The referees raise their hands, touchdown. And while we're still kind of trying to figure out what's going on, we didn't call our defensive play. They line up for the 2-point conversion. They run an option, and the running back runs in with both hands up, game over, 22-21, Mammoth Huskies go on. And like I said, I'm 49 years old now, and when me and my buddies from Desert High get back together, we invariably bring up that game, and we're still not over it. Anyway, going back to November 1980, the referees met in Lancaster, California, which is outside of Edwards, with our coach the following Tuesday and said, "We've looked at the film, the stopping the clock play and the fake fumble. We made a mistake. We're sorry." "I'm sorry" doesn't cut it. I'm sorry. So anyway, here's where the novel part kicks in. Both of my sisters married Air Force guys. They were both stationed at Edwards at the time I was there. So I'm working at HM Magazine one day in the year 2011, I guess, and I get a phone call. "Hey Doug, it's Tex. You won't believe this, but we've built a time machine. Remember that story you always said about Desert High? If you had a time machine, you'd go back and fix that game? Well, we're looking for a guinea pig to go back into time and change a small, insignificant event like a high school football game." So I go back to November 1980, and I go through ethics meetings about time travel. I can't travel with my iPhone in my pocket. I have to use this wristwatch that my grandpa Doc gave me that's like made in the 60s because I got to figure out what kind of clothes I wear. I have to take a survival training class because if the time machine goes back too far and I land in the desert in the 1800s, I've got to learn to eat roots and stuff like that and avoid being killed by people. So that's the fun of the book. I go back to November 1980 to try to fix that game. I have the challenge of, okay, how do I change it? Do I go and talk to the refs? Well, I did some investigating. Referees, they come to a game in a pack and they leave as soon as the whistle blows. They hightail out of there. They do not want to be a part of the game. And so for a civilian to walk up to a referee and start talking about fake fumbles and time management before a game, it's highly unlikely you're going to get that opportunity. So I'm faced with that challenge. I'm faced with how do I change the game? And the fun part is if I do overturn that game, hey, Desert goes on to the second round. I get to invent history. So Desert High, it took me about 5 years to write this thing. It's kind of a story that just kind of came out of me. I explained my experience. It just kind of came bubbling out of me. But one deadline after another for the magazine, I had to put off my writing. And sometimes a couple months, sometimes 6 months. At one point, I think a whole year went by when I didn't work on the book at all. But I finally published it in September, got it out. Got it in a couple stores that I've just kind of taken to myself. I had the chance in May to go back to Desert High, and I went to the BX and had a book signing at the BX there on base. And the high school gave me the gymnasium, and I had assemblies all day long. I spoke to the whole school. So that was kind of a dream come true to go back to your old high school. And
I made something of myself.
yeah, look at me, kids. That's one book. That's
Okay,
Desert High.
what a great story. That's wonderful. And it's available through HM Magazine, hmmag.com.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that's one book, and then you put out a book of interviews, a second book.
Yeah, back in 2004, Relevant magazine, which has an imprint, Relevant Books, or they had at the time, they decided to do Rock Stars on God. And the short story on that is, for years people had said, I love those interviews you do with secular rock stars where you talk to them about Jesus. You should make a book out of those. And I said, okay, I will. Finally, so I started shopping around. I got about 7 or 8 rejection letters before Relevant finally said yes. And what they did is they picked the top 20 names, the big names like Green Day, Henry Rollins, Sammy Hagar, Alice Cooper. And the plan was to do a series, to do volume 2 down the road. And I always knew after volume 1 came out, which is very exciting, I always knew that the big names don't always equal the best interviews. Whenever I get to do volume 2, I'm going to pick some of the best interviews. And so I put out volume 2 this year, came out in May, and I handpicked the best interviews. So I've got some of the satanic metal bands like Dimmu Borgir, Cradle of Filth, King Diamond, Slayer, all these bands, and it's like Typo Negative, some of the ones that were really, really juicy, really good conversations. And I did 25 interviews instead of 20. Some of the chapters have multiple interviews, like I've interviewed Megadeth 3 times, so there's like 3 sub-chapters, and Extreme twice. And so that just came out, and it was really fun to be able, like I said, put out the best interviews. I'm really excited about how, and it's fun to read them, because I had to, obviously go back and edit them and look at them again, and sometimes I was surprised and refreshed at how well these interviews went, because sometimes it starts off on a bad foot. You got somebody who doesn't want to talk about God, or they're offended, or they're cuckoo. And I treat it like a live radio or TV broadcast, because I print word for word what goes on in these interviews. And if it starts to go south, I feel the need to bring it back to center really quick, because I'm trying to manage it as if it was a live broadcast. Like if we're on TV right now and something starts to go haywire, the producers are freaking out in the background, and the person doing the interview has to kind of scramble to kind of bring it back. I kind of treat it like that. And so some of these, I have memories of where they went south. And it's refreshing to read that somehow, by the grace of God, I was able to bring the conversation back, and sometimes even get them to talk about God, which they didn't want to talk about. If we're not going to talk about my music, this interview is going to be over in 30 seconds. I've heard that before. And for some of those, I found a way to come back at the end and start talking about God again. So it's been kind of fun to see that happen.
And are you continuing to do these interviews with your online electronic magazine?
Yeah. I did Mark Tremonti of Creed fame and Alter Bridge fame last month. And so I'm still doing them in the magazine, and I've already got volume 3 and volume 4 mapped out, because I've got over 150 of these things in the can now. And so I'll be picking the best and trying to get some of these metal stars in there. Like in the latest edition, I got Iron Maiden, Ronnie James Dio, and Rob Halford of Judas Priest. So I've got some fun interviews. I've still got tons more in the can I can't wait to release.
Okay, and now you're working on an extended interview, or a book with an extended interview sessions with who?
I was asked to do the autobiography of Michael Sweet. He wants to write a book, and so I threw my hat in the ring and talked to him, and they thought it was a great idea. And so I did about 16 and a half hours of interviews back in December with Michael Sweet. This is going to be a book that's going to make you laugh, it's going to make you cry, and it's going to inspire you, hopefully. And so I've been working on that since December. It's like a co-written. It'll be like, honestly, Michael Sweet with Doug Van Pelt. So it's kind of fun at times. I get to kind of, with his permission and his approval, I get to make up stuff like maybe the color of the Toyota truck that they're driving, or some fill in the blanks on some of the stories. But it's basically him talking and me writing. And it's going to be fun. It's some neat stuff in there. I'm inspired by it.
And who's publishing that book?
That's still yet to be found. Big 3 Entertainment is the name of the record label that Stryper and Michael Sweet's solo albums are coming out on. They're hoping to release this book, his autobiography, at the same time as his new solo album. So the solo album's in the can. They're hoping to release a single or 2 over the summer. And I just gave the label a rough copy manuscript of the book about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So they have something that they're shopping with now, and I gave them like an abbreviated the first 3 chapters that they can actually send to potential publishers. I'm wondering if the record label might put it out themselves, but they're going to be shopping it to publishers, and that's yet to be determined yet. But it's probably going to be out late summer, early fall. So I got to get my butt in gear and finish the thing.
Yes, you do. And go to the gym so you're ready for those TV interviews with the lead singer of Stryper on the book tour.
Yeah, and I already know what's going to be the topic of every radio interview or every TV interview.
What's that?
I don't know if I should say, but just know that it's going to be eye popping and juicy. You know, when Stryper went through the against the law, they call it the against the law phase or the against the law period. They were in a dark place. You know, I always believed the best in them, and when I interviewed them, they were always on the up and up. But turns out behind the scenes there was some compromise going on, and they felt like complete hypocrites. Like Michael Sweet would get into his bunk at night, and he'd go, "Damn, why did I do that today? Damn, why did I do that? And I can't do that again." And then they did end up doing it again. So they went into this dark phase. They feel like hypocrites. They're getting up on stage saying one thing, and they're living another thing. And so some of the details, I just know that because of the stigma attached to it, it's every person that reads it is going to bring that up in the interview.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Honesty never is. And
Yeah.
redemption, right? And they're out of that dark place now, and it might be a welcome, refreshing change for everyone.
I agree. You know, when I talk, I usually try to balance things. Like if I'm telling you something, I'll try to tell you both sides of an issue. Like if it's a doctrinal thing, I'll try to tell you what one can't believe, what another can't believe. So I believe in balance, and I believe in the power of words. And you know, some words can be harmful, some words can be incredibly uplifting. Some words that seem harsh or seem drastic can actually be helpful, like you're saying. By being honest, you can bring somebody through healing, and you can pull somebody into honest dialogue that way. But I've often tried to pastor my words, and I'll try to edit myself. When I communicate, I will try to present a balanced perspective. But with this book, I am personally, internally backing off, and I'm letting Michael Sweet say what he wants to say. I'm not going to pastor him through this. I'm not going to edit I'm editing them, but I'm not going to edit his thoughts. And, if he says something that I wouldn't necessarily put it that way, it's going to be said the way he would say it. And so it will be honest, and it will be raw. And there's some things in there, like his wife died of cancer. His sweet wife he's married to for almost 30 years. He was her chief caretaker.
Wow.
So he was feeding her, and he was taking her to the doctor and cleaning her up and helping her get from room to room and whatnot. And he actually quit Stryper to save his marriage.
Wow.
And so it's very, very inspiring to see some of that, and to see his faith be tested at times where he was mad at God. You know, when his wife was dying, he was like, "Why is this happening? We've devoted our whole lives to serving you." And he had those real questions. And so the book will hopefully have these dramatic ups and downs and be inspired, make you cry. I cried several times writing the thing. So it's really inspiring. I can't wait for it to come out.
Well, that's something to look forward to in the future. And speaking of the future, this is going to be a future without Cornerstone. We're asking everyone some of their favorite memories of Cornerstone, and perhaps just your thoughts in general. Mr. Man Behind HM Stage.
Gosh, this is my 26th year at Cornerstone, I believe, in a row. I came in '87 for the first time, and been every year since. One of my daughters was born on June 11th, and we rented an RV that had air conditioning, of course, and we were there that year.
Oh.
So she was 3 weeks old, and she was at Cornerstone. So I have a ton of good memories. It's like going back. The first thing that stood out, well, some of the Charlie Peacock performances back in the '80s, where he had the trio with Vince Ebo and Jimmy Abeg. Those were just magic moments where they were improvising, and they so much soul was just coming through their pores, and just the performances was amazing. Love those. And some of the relationships I built, being able to sit in a tent with Les Carlson of Cornerstone. I got some pictures of that, and just really been able to bond with some of these people. And I got to meet Valery Baranov, who was this Russian guy who went to prison in Russia and was given psychoactive drugs by the government because he was a Christian. He recorded a Christian rock opera called The Trumpet Call. And I was able to sit face to face with him. That was a real privilege to talk to a modern day martyr and talk about his rock opera and what he'd been through. That was amazing. Seeing Sacred Warrior for the first time they played, and they did an encore of Holy, 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 and they ended the song with like an a cappella version of that chorus, and the lights were shining up straight up behind them, and it's an all black stage, and that was a magic moment. Seeing Daryl Mansfield was always amazing. He would wear a monkey mask and talk about evolution and say, "Is your grandpa a monkey?" Vengeance Rising and The Crucified and those old tin metal buildings up in Grace Lake were amazing, and the mosh pits were ferocious. and it was on a concrete floor, and the people backstage would pick up these, you know how like on Halloween or fall festivals they have apple bobbing, and they have those big containers that are about this big around. I don't know how many gallons it is, probably about 50 gallons of water with ice. And like I said, your kids would bob for apples in them. Those would be filled with melted ice water, and a couple guys would chug those to the edge of the stage and throw it into the audience. And all those people in there, pretty soon that cold, icy water would turn into steam. And, those were amazing times. I did some great interviews on the grounds of Cornerstone. Like, I'll never forget Daryl Mansfield's testimony of, how did you learn to play harmonica like you do? And he goes, well, I approach it like a lead guitar. And I used to play guitar, and I was a troubled youth. I didn't do drugs. They used to say, don't panic, it's organic Daryl Mansfield. I would show up at school in a cop's uniform and direct traffic into the parking lot some mornings. But he had his girlfriend leave him, and his uncle died in Vietnam in the same week. So he wanted to go be with Jesus, and the only way he knew how to be with Jesus was to die. So he took like a 12-inch butcher knife into a church altar, and he cut his wrist so hard on his right wrist, he had to hold the knife with his knees to cut his left wrist. He laid down on the altar to go meet Jesus, and a janitor happened to be by and took him to the hospital. The cop asked him in the ambulance, what do you want, son? And he said, life. And the cop didn't have a program for that. But some nurse, I guess, it showed him how he could know Jesus without dying. So that's kind of a really neat memory of an interview at Cornerstone. I could just go on and on and on, but I'll let you ask another question if you want to.
Well, where do we go from here, Doug? Help us.
Where do we go? Well, this is a family and a community, and we have this wonderful thing everybody brags about and laughs and mocks, Facebook, but it's an awesome way to keep in touch. There's the old telephone, and there's like getting a letter out and writing, staying in touch with your friends. I've had friends that I've met at Cornerstone that have gone on to be with the Lord now, and friends that have been lifelong friends I met years ago. And so staying in touch with them gives you that connection, because one of the bright spots of Cornerstone is that fellowship of the saints, and that time where we spend where we're just catching up with each other. And so that's wonderful. The music, the magic that's happened here at Cornerstone, if Cornerstone doesn't come back in a few years, which I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't, because Jesus people bought this 670-acre farm. I believe they're probably still paying the note on that, or they still own it. It's still theirs. So they've got the place to do it again. But God bless them. They've lost money so many years that they just can't keep doing it. It's like my magazine. It's like I've had to go out of print because I couldn't afford that $7,000 print bill that came every 2 months. So if Cornerstone doesn't go on, what do we do in the next couple of years? We'll just look around you and go find that magic at other events. I live in Austin, Texas, which is just the most wonderful city in the world. I was an Air Force brat, and when I had a chance to become an adult and seek my roots, I sunk them deep, and I haven't budged for over 30 years. So there's South by Southwest, there's ACL Fest, there's Ichthus Festival in Kentucky, there's some events in the Chicago area. Sunshine's a pretty cool festival. So there's places to go. Nothing is going to match what you have here at Cornerstone. There's a magic, the chemistry here, the personality of those involved. It's unique. You're not going to find it. You didn't even find it at Cornerstone, Florida, Cornerstone, Carolina, and Cornerstone, California. Some of the flavor was there, but it wasn't the same. But the people here have a unique personality. It's precious. I hate to use a feminine word like precious, but it's a precious thing. And so you have to look for it and just know that you're not going to find the exact thing, but you're still going to have fellow saints. You're going to have incredible musicians making magic music.
Oh, thank you, Doug. All right, well, we're going to wrap this up. Doug, can you stick around for a little bit? Maybe say hi to some of your friends and
Sure.
fans? Okay, and the name of your website again?
hmmag.com. If you can't remember that, hmmagazine.com, or just Google HMag. Like there's somebody's ripping people off with charging their debit cards, and they're putting HM magazines in all caps.
That's not you?
No, it's not me. So I get waves of phone calls going back to June of 2010. You charged my credit card, and I'm like, no, ma'am, I'm sorry. Let me tell you what happened. And
Okay.
So somebody uses the name HM Magazines, and they'll Google HM Magazines, and they'll get me. So I'm easily searchable on the internet.
Well known. All right.
You can find me even if you don't want to.
Okay, Facebook, you're around. Great. Come back and sign our artist roster. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Doug Van Pelt from HN Magazine, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon, Doug.
Thank you for coming.
Stick around.
Thanks for stopping by the Phantom Toll Booth on YouTube. Before you go, make sure you visit our website and browse around our album, movie, concert, and book reviews, the latest music news, and our extensive archives dating back 16 years. Bookmark our site, check out our videos and news feed. Make room for that shadowy structure on your journey ahead. Tollbooth.org, slow down, and have your change ready.